I never thought my own daughter would betray me, but that morning, when I saw her standing in my study with my will in her hands, something inside me shattered. Dad, you won't need all this for long, she said, her voice cold, sharp, nothing like the little girl who once held my hand. I froze. In front of her, on my desk, were two documents I had never seen before, fake, updated, property papers and a rewritten will, with my signature carefully forged at the bottom, my daughter. My own child had tried to erase my son, rewrite my wishes, and claim everything for herself. When she realized I was standing behind her, she didn't even flinch. Instead, she looked me in the eyes and whispered, "You should have given it all to me anyway." Those words cut deeper than any knife. I asked her why she would do something like this, why she would betray her own family. She didn't deny anything. She didn't even act ashamed. "Because I deserve it," she snapped. "You owe me, and I'm not waiting for you to decide anymore." My hands were shaking. My heart felt like it was breaking from the inside. I thought maybe she was just confused, pressured by her husband, or blinded by fear. But then she stepped closer, lowered her voice, and said, "Just sign the real version too, right now, before anyone else finds out." The daughter I raised with love was gone. In her place stood someone greedy, someone willing to break the law, destroy her family, and throw away her own dignity for money. And that was the moment I realized, if I didn't take control now, I would lose everything, not just my property, but my peace, my future, my self-respect. I quietly walked out of the room, pretending to be speechless. But in my mind, a decision was already forming, a decision that would change everything, because she tried to rewrite my will behind my back, so I erased her from the real one. I still remember the sound my heart made that morning. It wasn't a beat, it was a crack. When I stepped into my study, the last person I expected to find there was my daughter, Sarah, and certainly not surrounded by documents she should never have touched. She didn't hear me at first. She was too busy bending over my desk, flipping pages, rearranging files, whispering something under her breath. At first, I thought maybe she was looking for an old photograph or a family record. But then I saw it, my will, wide open, with a signature at the bottom that looked exactly like mine. Except it wasn't. My throat closed, my palms turned cold. I stepped forward slowly, quietly, almost afraid to breathe. And that's when she turned around, Dad, not soft, not warm, not surprised, just irritated, as if I'd interrupted her. I asked her what she was doing. She didn't blink, didn't hide anything. Instead, she pushed the will toward me like she was showing me a grocery list. "You aren't going to fix it," she said flatly. "I just helped you. Helped me by forging my name, by removing her brother's share, by inserting her husband as a legal advisor to my estate." I felt sick. I told her this was illegal betrayal, manipulation, fraud. She shrugged. "Dad, you're old. You don't understand how things work now. You're wasting money. You don't need all this property. I'm just securing what should come to me anyway." Her voice was sharp, cold, practical, like she had rehearsed this entire speech. I told her to step away from my desk. She didn't move. Instead, she leaned closer, eyes locked into mine. "You're signing the real papers too," she whispered. "And you're doing it today." My knees nearly gave out. My own daughter, the child I raised, protected, carried on my shoulders, was threatening me. Not with violence, but with something worse. Betrayal wrapped in entitlement. I asked her why she was doing this, why she thought she deserved everything, why she believed she had the right to rewrite my life. She smiled a small, victorious smile. "Because if I don't take it now, he will." She meant her brother, my son. Before I could reply, she picked up the forged will, folded it neatly, and slipped it into her bag. Then she looked at me and said the sentence that would haunt me for weeks. "You can fight me if you want, but I will get everything." And she walked out, leaving behind the smell of betrayal and a father who suddenly realized he had no idea who his daughter had become. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my daughter standing in my study with that forged will in her hand. Calm, confident, heartless, I kept trying to convince myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe she was pressured. Maybe her husband had manipulated her. Maybe she was scared about her future. But the more I tried to excuse her behavior, the more the truth pressed against me. This wasn't sudden. It had been building for years, and I had ignored all the signs. The first cracks appeared after her marriage. Her in-laws treated wealth like oxygen. Money wasn't just important to them, it was everything. Every conversation revolved around property, investments, influence. And slowly, painfully, I watched Sarah become like them. She stopped visiting unless she needed something. She mocked her brother for being too simple. She told me I needed to modernize my mindset. At first, I laughed it off, then I tolerated it, and then I got used to it. I never realized I was letting her drift into a mindset that saw me not as her father, but as a walking bank. My son, Adel, tried to warn me many times. "Dad, they're not right," he said. "They keep asking about inheritance. Be careful." I brushed him off, telling him he was overthinking. I didn't want to believe one child would turn against me. I didn't want to admit I had raised someone capable of betrayal. But now, standing in my study again, searching through my files, reality hit me like a hammer. It wasn't just the will she had touched. I found 3 more documents, a fake request supposedly signed by me, asking the bank for a valuation of my property, a transfer draft listing Sarah as future sole owner of my ancestral land, a medical declaration stating that I wasn't mentally stable enough to manage my finances. My hands trembled as I read each one. She wasn't impulsive. She wasn't emotional. She wasn't confused. She was planning this, step by step, quietly, patiently. The deeper I looked, the darker it became. Her husband's debts, her in-laws' history of manipulating wealthy relatives, her sudden interest in helping me organize my documents, and then, the biggest blow of all, at the bottom of the drawer, I found a note written in her handwriting. "Dad trusts me blindly. He won't suspect anything." My chest tightened. I had trusted her with my heart, my home, my life, but now I realized she trusted only my assets. I sank into the chair, unable to breathe for a moment. The betrayal wasn't a moment, it was a pattern. A slow, silent poisoning of the very bond we once shared. I knew then that I needed help, real help. Someone who could protect me from my own blood, and there was only one person who could guide me now. The next morning, with barely any sleep and a heavy, sinking feeling in my chest, I called my lawyer, Mr. Farouk. He had been with our family for more than 20 years. He handled my business registration, property deeds, and even some of the smallest legal formalities. If there was anyone I could trust in this storm, it was him. He asked me to come to his office immediately, his voice unusually tense. When I arrived, he didn't greet me with his usual warm handshake. Instead, he closed the blinds, locked the door, and motioned for me to sit. "Tell me everything," he said. I told him what I saw, the forged will, the fake documents, the signatures, the threats. Every word tasted bitter coming out of my mouth. He listened silently, eyebrows drawn together, jaw tight. When I finished, he didn't look surprised. That scared me more than everything else. "Sir, there's something I need to tell you," he finally said. He opened his drawer and pulled out a thick file one I had never seen before, sealed with a red ribbon. "I was waiting for the right time. But after what you've told me, you need to see this now." My heartbeat quickened. "What is it?" I asked. He placed it on the table carefully, like it contained explosives. "This is related to your daughter." For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He opened the file. Inside were several printed emails, copies of messages, draft legal requests, and handwritten notes. All from Sarah, all from the past 6 weeks. She had been meeting him secretly, trying to convince him to help her update my will. But that wasn't even the worst part. She had asked him if I could be declared mentally incompetent. She had asked about transferring assets to prevent future disputes. She had inquired how she could gain control of my estate early. Mr. Farouk shook his head. "I refused every request," he said. "But I didn't want to alarm you without proof. I suspected something was wrong, and your daughter was hiding her intentions." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. My daughter had gone behind my back. She wasn't pressured. She wasn't confused. She was preparing for this like a project, coldly, selfishly, carefully. But then my lawyer pulled out one more envelope, smaller, sealed and marked with my name. "This," he said, "is something I prepared years ago at your request. I think you've forgotten." My eyebrows shot up. "I prepared something?" I asked. He nodded. Something that might save you now? He slid the envelope toward me and suddenly everything felt heavier. Like whatever was inside could change everything. My fingers shook as I picked it up. Open it when you're alone, he said quietly. It contains a truth your daughter doesn't know exists. A chill ran up my spine. A truth unknown to Sarah, hidden even from me. I walked out of his office with the envelope in my hand, knowing that whatever was inside would determine my next move. When I returned home with the sealed envelope, I felt like I was carrying a bomb in my pocket. I wanted to open it immediately, but something stopped me, a strange instinct whispering that I wasn't ready for what was inside. Before I could gather myself, I heard voices coming from the living room. Loud voices, angry voices, Sarah and her husband. He has to sign it, Amir. Her husband barked. You said he was soft. You said he always gives in. I froze in the hallway. Sarah replied sharply, he will. He has no choice. He's old, confused half the time. That was enough. I stepped into the room. Her words died mid-sentence when she saw me. Her husband stiffened, eyes widening with guilt and irritation mixed together. What is this about? I asked quietly. Sarah crossed her arms. It's about the papers you're refusing to sign. I kept my voice steady. I told you yesterday I'm not signing anything. Her husband scoffed. Sir, it's for the best. You can't manage everything alone. Sarah is only trying to help. Help? By forging my will, by declaring me mentally unstable, by planning to take everything. I didn't trust myself to speak without exploding. Instead, I said, both of you need to leave. Sarah's expression hardened. You don't get it, Dad, she said, stepping closer. If you don't sign willingly, the court can force you to hand over financial control. We already talked to someone about, what did you say? I cut in sharply. Her husband tried to interrupt. Look, old man. I turned on him so fast he stepped back. Don't you dare call me that in my own house. His jaw clenched, but he stayed quiet. Sarah sighed dramatically, as if I was inconveniencing her. Dad, we're not your enemies, but you're making this complicated. You have assets, properties, money. You don't need all of it. You're living alone. You're not capable of enough. I snapped. The room chilled. Even her husband stopped pretending confidence. I know what you did. I said slowly, the documents, the signatures, the meetings behind my back. Sarah's face twitched the first real sign of panic. But she tried to recover quickly. Well, if you knew, then you should also know it's necessary. Necessary? She had truly become someone I didn't recognize. I pointed toward the door. Get out, both of you. Her husband muttered under his breath, he'll sign eventually. He has to. Sarah gave me one last icy stare before walking out. But as they reached the door, she turned and said something that sent a cold shiver down my spine. You can't stop us forever. One way or another, I'm getting what's mine. I stood there in silence long after the door slammed shut. I had seen greed before, but never in my own child's eyes, and something told me this was only the beginning of the attack. That night, just as I was settling into a rare moment of silence, Sarah called. Her voice was suddenly sweet, unnaturally sweet. Dad, we're having a family dinner tonight. Please come. We want to talk calmly. Calmly. Nothing about her tone felt calm. It felt calculated, practiced. Rehearsed. Still, I agreed. Not because I trusted her, but because I needed to understand just how far she was willing to go. When I reached their house, the first thing I noticed was that the table was already set. Not for a family dinner, but for a negotiation. There were no regular dishes, no warmth, no laughter. Just formal-looking files stacked beside my plate. My stomach dropped. Sarah welcomed me with a forced smile. Her husband shook my hand like he was preparing for a business deal. Then, a few minutes later, Adil, my son, walked in behind me. He wasn't invited, but he came because he knew something was wrong. The moment Sarah saw him, her expression twisted. What is he doing here? She snapped. I answered before Adil could speak. He's my son. If this is a family dinner, he belongs here. She clenched her jaw but said nothing. We sat down. The air was thick tight as if the walls themselves were listening. Her husband cleared his throat. Sir, let's get straight to the point. He pushed the stack of documents toward me. These are the papers we need you to sign. It's nothing complicated, just a small update to your will and property management. I didn't touch the papers. Why would I sign anything? Sarah rolled her eyes dramatically. Dad, don't start. We're trying to help you. Adel leaned forward. Help him by kicking me out of his inheritance, by forging Dad's signature, by lying to him. Sarah slammed her hand on the table. That's not what this is about. Oh, really? Adel shot back. Then why is my name removed from the will? Her face went pale. I watched her carefully, and for the first time, I saw fear flicker across her expression. Her husband quickly cut in. This isn't the time for emotional outbursts. We are trying to protect the assets. Protect them from whom? I asked quietly. He hesitated. Sarah took a deep breath, lowered her voice, and said, From you, Dad. You're not managing things properly anymore. You forget things. You misplace documents. We're scared you'll make mistakes. Adel scoffed. You mean you're scared you won't get control fast enough? Sarah's eyes flashed with anger. Then came the moment everything revealed itself. She pushed the papers directly in front of me. Sign it, she said. Her voice wasn't sweet anymore. It wasn't pretending. It was a command. Adel stood up. You can't force him. But Sarah snapped at him. Stay out of this. This doesn't concern you. I felt something inside me break. This wasn't a dinner. It wasn't a discussion. It was an ambush, a trap disguised as a family gathering. And then she leaned in close and whispered the words that confirmed her true intentions. If you don't sign tonight, you'll regret it. The entire table went silent. Her threat hung in the air like poison. I hardly slept after that disastrous dinner. Sarah's threat echoed in my mind like a storm that refused to die down. If you don't sign tonight, you'll regret it. What kind of daughter says that to her father? By morning, my hand still trembled when I poured tea. I wasn't scared of losing property. I had built everything from nothing. But losing my daughter to greed, that was the kind of loss you don't recover from easily. Around noon, my childhood friend Rashid called. He rarely contacted me unless it was important. Amir, we need to talk. He said, meet me at the old tea house. His voice sounded urgent and worried. When I arrived, he was already sitting there, staring into his cup like he was wrestling with his thoughts. The moment he saw me, he stood up and hugged me tightly. You look tired, he said softly. I sighed. Tired isn't the word, my friend. We sat down and he leaned forward. I heard things. He began about your daughter and her in-laws. My stomach tightened. Rashid had lived in the same area as Sarah's in-laws for years. He knew things, real things, not rumors. I forced myself to ask, what did you hear? He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Amir, her in-laws are drowning in debt. Their business collapsed last year. They owe money to several people, dangerous people. I felt a sudden chill. And they think, he continued, that your wealth is the easiest solution. They've done this before, manipulating elderly relatives, pressuring them into signing over property. I couldn't breathe for a moment. My daughter was married into a family that targeted vulnerable people for their money, and Sarah, I whispered, is she part of this? Rashid exhaled deeply. That's the worst part. They've convinced her that she deserves everything, that you're being unfair. They've filled her head with poison. I clenched my fists under the table. He wasn't finished. They've been telling people that soon your assets will be under new management. And someone mentioned, they're planning to move into your house. My heart froze. Move into my house, while I was still alive. Rashid grabbed my hand. Amir, listen to me. You're in danger. Not physically maybe, but legally, emotionally, financially. They're planning something big. You need to protect yourself. My mind flashed back to the forged documents. The forced dinner, the threats, the pressure, the sudden interest in my paperwork, all of it made sense now. It wasn't only Sarah acting out of greed. She was being coached, guided, and used. But before I could process any of it, Rashid leaned in and said something that made my blood run cold. They're meeting a lawyer tomorrow. Not your lawyer, someone else. I overheard them saying they're preparing to challenge your mental capacity. I stared at him in disbelief. Challenge my mental capacity to take legal control of everything. My throat tightened, and they said, he whispered, that if you didn't cooperate, they'd find a way to make you look unstable. The tea house felt suddenly smaller. The air thick. I realized then that this wasn't just inheritance drama. This was a coordinated attack, and I was the target. But they didn't know one thing. I had a sealed envelope in my pocket, and inside it was a truth they weren't prepared for. That night, after hearing everything Rashid told me, I sat alone in my study with the sealed envelope on my desk. I stared at it for a long time. This small packet, something I had apparently prepared years ago, something even I didn't remember, was now the only thing standing between me and the destruction of everything I built. With a deep breath, I finally tore it open. Inside were two items, a handwritten letter in my own handwriting, a set of property deeds documents I had completely forgotten existed. My hands shook as I unfolded the letter. It was written 5 years ago, and the moment I read the first line, memories came rushing back. If you are reading this, it means your trust has been broken. I remembered, that year my health had been terrible. I had been hospitalized twice. The doctors didn't know what was wrong, and for a while I feared the worst. During that time, my lawyer advised me to prepare a backup plan in case someone tried to misuse my illness to gain control. He suggested I place a hidden safeguard, documents no one else knew about, so that if my family ever turned on each other, I would still have control over my legacy. I had agreed, but as my health improved, I never thought I'd need them. I never imagined my own daughter would be the threat. The deeds in the envelope were shocking. They confirmed that half of my assets, including the ancestral land and my largest property, were not registered under the main family structure. Instead, they were placed under a private trust in my name, secure, untouchable, and hidden. No one could access them, not without my explicit approval, not even with forged documents. Sarah didn't know these deeds existed. Her in-laws didn't know. Her husband didn't know. All the papers she tried to tamper with, they only covered the visible assets, the ones listed in the traditional record, but these were invisible to them, a second layer of protection, a fortress hidden behind a doorway only I knew about. A long-forgotten smile appeared on my face. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope, but that hope was short-lived, because just as I finished reading the last line of the letter, I heard something outside my study window. Soft footsteps, rustling, whispering, my stomach dropped. I moved quietly, lifted the curtain, and froze. Sarah and her husband were in the backyard, flashlights in hand, looking through my windows, searching for documents, searching for something they thought I was hiding, and they weren't alone. Another man, one I didn't recognize, was with them. My daughter's voice carried through the open window. He must have something here. He's not stupid. Keep looking. They were planning to break in. My heart pounded. If they found the deeds or the letter, everything would fall apart. I quietly hid the documents in the one place they would never check, inside an old, dusty storage box labeled Tax Receipts 1999. Moments later, I heard the backyard door rattle. They were entering, and I knew then, enough was enough. The next morning, after a long night of watching shadows move around my house, I knew something had to change. I could no longer react, I had to act. Sarah and her husband had crossed a line no child should ever cross, sneaking into my yard, whispering like thieves, searching for documents like criminals. They weren't just planning to steal my inheritance. They were planning to erase me. I realized there was only one way to end this. I needed proof. Real proof. Unarguable proof. So I did something I never thought I'd have to do against my own daughter. I bought small security cameras and audio recorders and placed them around the house. Not in secret places, but in strategic places. Behind books, inside plant pots, under the dining table, above the study door. Each camera was connected to my phone. I hated doing this. It felt dirty. Like I was betraying my child. But then I remembered her words, "If you don't sign tonight, you'll regret it." No, this wasn't a betrayal. This was protection, and I didn't have to wait long. That very afternoon, as I pretended to nap in my bedroom, I received a phone notification. Motion detected in study room. My heart hammered. I opened the camera feed. There they were, Sarah, her husband, and the same unknown man from the night before, inside my home, rifling through drawers, opening cupboards, pulling out files, destroying the peaceful space I had lived in for decades. Where does he keep it? Her husband hissed. There has to be something. He's hiding something. Sarah pulled out my old folders and tossed them on the desk. He's not stupid. Dad always had backups. He won't give in unless we break him. Her words sliced through me. Break me, how did we become enemies? The unknown man approached her. Are you sure the court will believe he's incompetent? She nodded confidently. We've already started building our case. All we need is one mistake, one moment of confusion, and the doctor we talked to will help us. My breath caught in my throat. A doctor. They were involving medical professionals to declare me mentally unfit. Then came the worst part. Her husband said, if he keeps resisting, we can scare him. You know, give him a little push. Sarah didn't argue, didn't gasp, didn't hesitate. She simply said, do what you need to do. He can't keep controlling everything. My phone almost slipped from my hand. The daughter I raised, the child who once cried when I scraped my knee, was now planning to intimidate me, but then something unexpected happened. The man noticed the small blinking light in the corner, the hidden camera. He pointed. What's that? Sarah froze. Her husband quickly moved closer. It's a camera, the man said. He's recording us. My heart stopped. Sarah climbed onto the chair, grabbed the camera, yanked it out, and smashed it on the floor. But what she didn't know was, I had 6 more cameras recording everything. She stared at the broken camera with fury, breathing hard, and said, he thinks he can trap us. Fine, let him try. We're finishing this soon. They left the room, but not before Sarah whispered something that sent chills down my spine. Tomorrow we confront him, and this time, he won't say no. The trap had been sprung. They were exposing themselves without even realizing it, and I knew it was time to seal the final part of my plan. The next morning, with my heart pounding but my mind clear, I walked into Mr. Farouk's office once again. I was ready to take control back, ready to fight for what was mine and, more importantly, for my dignity. Mr. Farouk greeted me quietly, sensing the storm inside me. I've been reviewing your original will, he said. The one your daughter tried to erase. I nodded. I want to make it official. I want a new will drafted, incorporating everything from the secret trust and property deeds. I want it ironclad. He smiled slightly. Good. That will put an end to their games. We went over every detail carefully, who would inherit what, conditions for property transfer, and most importantly, clauses that protected my rights until my last breath. I also added a surprising twist. I named a trusted family friend, someone completely outside the greed, filled circle, as executor, a person who would make sure nothing was stolen or hidden. As we finalized the document, Mr. Farouk handed me an envelope. Amir, this contains a letter addressed to your family, he said. I took it and read silently. To those who sought to deceive and manipulate, know this: respect and loyalty are worth more than gold. The legacy you tried to steal will be protected, and the truth will come to light. This house belongs to the one who honors it, not the one who tries to own it by force. I folded the letter carefully. It's time they understand, I said quietly. After signing the new will, I left the office feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and relief. But the battle wasn't over. Back at home, Sarah and her husband were waiting. She looked at me with a cold smile. Did you sign it? She asked. Yes. I said firmly. Her smile faltered. We'll see how far that will get you, she said. But I had one last move. I called my son, Adil, and asked him to come over. When he arrived, I handed him the envelope with the secret deeds and the new will. Take these to the lawyer's office, I said. Make sure everything is filed. No one touches a single asset without my consent. Adil nodded, eyes shining with determination. I turned to Sarah and said, your threats don't work anymore. She stepped closer, voice low and venomous. You're making a mistake. I smiled a calm, unshakable smile. Respect matters more than money, and now they know it too. For the first time in months, I felt peace. The family I once knew may be broken, but my legacy, my truth remains intact. And that's what matters most. After the battle with Sarah and her husband, the house felt quieter but not empty. It felt like peace was slowly settling back in, like the calm after a storm. I began to reclaim my life piece by piece. The first thing I did was reconnect with old friends I had ignored for years. People like Rashid, who had stood by me when the family turned cold. We met for tea, shared stories, and rebuilt trust that had been broken. Then I took up hobbies I had abandoned: gardening, reading, even painting. It helped me heal, helped me focus on something beyond the fight. Most importantly, I stopped hiding from the world. I started attending community events again. I volunteered at the local library. I truly laughed for the first time in months. The house, once filled with whispers of betrayal, began to feel like home again, but the scars were still there. Sarah and her husband hadn't given up. They sent lawyers, made calls, tried to find loopholes, but I was ready. With my new will in place, backed by solid evidence, their plans crumbled like dust. More than that, I found strength in knowing I wasn't alone. Adel stood by me, my friends stood by me, and most importantly, I stood by myself. The fight had been painful, but it reminded me what truly mattered. Not money, not property, but respect, and the peace that comes from knowing you've done the right thing. Just when I thought the storm was finally passing, my phone rang late one evening. It was Sarah. Her voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. "Dad, can we talk?" she asked. I hesitated. Was this a trick? Another scheme, or a sign that maybe, just maybe, she regretted everything? I agreed to meet her the next day at a small cafe near my home, a neutral place, away from the tension of the house. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting alone, nervously stirring her tea. She looked tired, older, different. "I'm sorry," she said, voice cracking. Those words hit me harder than any argument or betrayal. "For everything," she continued, "for trying to rewrite your will, for the lies, for turning the family against you." I listened quietly, unsure if I wanted to forgive her or keep the walls I had built. She looked up, eyes full of tears. I was wrong. I let greed blind me, my in-laws. They twisted everything, but it was my choice too. Her confession was painful but honest. I asked her why she came now. She took a deep breath. "I want to make things right. I want to be part of the family again, but on your terms, not theirs." It wasn't an easy conversation. There were tears, raised voices, moments of silence. But for the first time in a long time, it felt like healing was possible. I told her, "Trust takes time. You have a lot to prove." She nodded, and just before we parted, she whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." That night, I felt a cautious hope. Maybe family could be mended, maybe respect could be rebuilt, but deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of a long road. The morning after Sarah's apology, I was still holding on to a fragile hope when a letter arrived at my doorstep. The envelope was plain, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Sarah's husband. I opened it with trembling hands. The words inside were cold and calculated. "You think this ends with Sarah's apology. You're mistaken. This family will get what it wants with or without you. Keep standing in our way, and you'll lose everything." A chill ran down my spine. They weren't done, not by a long shot, but instead of fear, something else grew inside me, a fierce determination. That afternoon, I called a family meeting, this time on my terms. Adil was by my side. Friends I trusted were present as silent witnesses. Sarah arrived, looking nervous but resolute. Her husband showed up, too, his face unreadable. I stood, voice steady but firm. "This ends here," I declared. "You tried to rewrite my will. You tried to erase my name. You threatened me. You broke the trust of this family." I held up the envelope from the morning. "This letter is proof you have no intention of stopping." But I wasn't here to fight anymore. I am willing to forgive, but only if respect and honesty return to this family. Sarah looked at me, tears welling in her eyes. Her husband said nothing. The room was tense. Then, unexpectedly, Sarah stepped forward. "We're sorry," she said. "Not just to you, but to everyone. We were wrong." Adil's face softened. I could see the weight of years lifting slowly, but I wasn't naive. I knew forgiveness was a journey, not a moment. So I said, "Show me, actions, not words." The silence was heavy but hopeful. For the first time, I felt the possibility of a new chapter, a family rebuilt not by greed but by love. After the confrontation, things slowly began to change. Sarah kept her promises, attending family counseling, being honest, and staying away from her in-laws' influence. Adil and I rebuilt our bond, stronger than before. I focused on living a peaceful life, traveling when I wanted, enjoying hobbies without guilt, and surrounding myself with people who truly cared. The weight of betrayal lifted, replaced by hope. The house, once a battleground, felt like home again. I learned that peace isn't just the absence of conflict, it's the presence of respect, trust, and love. And while the scars remain, they remind me of how strong I've become. After everything, I knew my story wasn't just mine, it was a lesson for others. I began sharing my experience with friends, neighbors, and even local community groups. I talked openly about betrayal, greed, and the pain of watching family break apart over money. But more than that, I spoke about forgiveness and the importance of boundaries. How sometimes love means standing firm even when it hurts. How respect matters more than wealth. I urged others to protect themselves legally and emotionally, to never let fear silence them, to trust their instincts. People listened, some shared their own stories, some thanked me for shining light on a hidden battle many face, and slowly I realized the pain I lived through had a purpose. It wasn't just about losing or winning an inheritance. It was about reclaiming dignity, about teaching that family isn't just blood, it's respect, honesty, and care, and that no amount of money is worth losing yourself over. Months passed, and life settled into a calm rhythm. I felt lighter, freer, but deep inside, I knew the story wasn't just about what was lost or gained. It was about a lesson, a truth I needed to share before the curtain fell. One afternoon, I gathered the family again, this time, not to argue, but to speak from the heart. I looked at Sarah, at Adel, even at those who had once turned against me. I said, respect matters more than money, and now you know it too. There was silence. Then I told them what I truly wanted them to understand. Money can disappear in an instant, but respect is something you carry with you, something no one can take away. It's the foundation of family, trust, and peace. I saw tears in Sarah's eyes. Adel nodded, and in that moment, I felt the weight lift completely. The family I once feared lost was healing, not because of property or wills, but because of truth and love rediscovered. And as I closed the door behind me that day, I smiled quietly, knowing this was the beginning of a new chapter, one where respect was the greatest inheritance of all.